Hello, everyone. Ooh, shaken there. Hello and welcome to my video essay. Today's video will be on the Holocaust and war in cartoons during the period of World War II. I think this topic is very interesting because cartoons play such a vital role in spreading mass messages through many different medias. They're published in newspapers as well as shown on TV with like cartoons, animation versus like political cartoons. And a lot of people, have this mindset cartoons and animations are for children. But then, as I will be discussing in this essay, that is not the case. So, without further ado, let's dive in. Throughout history, cartoons have been a key tool in spreading messages all across audiences in different regions. When in times of war, cartoons played a key role when it came to propaganda, especially in America. Major animation studios such as Warner Brothers and Walt Disney created animated features in order to support the war effort. Propaganda did not just reach animation, but it was also spread to comics as well. Some of these comics focus on fantastical superheroes such as Captain America, but other cartoons are far more political, straight to the point. For example, while Dr. Seuss is mostly known for his children's books, he happened to be quite political during his cartoons he created during the era of World War II. With all of this in mind, while researching, I found several pieces of literature that contained anti-Nazi propaganda, but I did struggle to find anti-Semitism and Holocaust information in cartoons. But despite this, I think it's still important to discuss this topic. I just wanted to throw that in as a disclaimer. I think it still applies to the history of the Holocaust and what surrounds that history. It kind of prompts the question, why was the Holocaust erased from these cartoons for the most part? So yeah, in this essay, I'm just going to be deep diving into the cartoons of this time period in order to highlight the representation in this art form. So let us begin with the Walt Disney Company. Walt Disney had several different animations during this time period, but let's talk about Walt Disney himself. There has been some questionable background, whether it comes to if he's a Nazi sympathizer or if he's anti-Semitic. It's kind of hard to say, but it is, there's a lot of mixed findings on this. But it is interesting to note that in 1938, just a month after Kristallnacht, Disney allowed the Nazi filmmaker Leni Riefenstahl into his studio. So, that being said, there were reports that he was hesitant to let her in fear of the company being boycotted. I guess form your own opinion on that, to each their own. All this said, there was still no Jewish representation in Disney's animations during this time period for the most part, despite how much Jewish people played a role in Nazi ideology. And I kind of found this to be true with all of the medias I analyzed in this essay. Speaking of the Nazi mindset, let's take a look at the 1943 Disney short Reason and Emotion. This is a short in which we're shown the importance between the balance of the two psyches, reason and emotion. Fun fact, this film inspired Disney Pixar's Inside Out.
That's right, emotion. Go ahead. Put reason out of the way. That's great. Fine. For Hitler, that master rabble-rouser destroys reason by preying upon the weakness of emotion with fear, sympathy, pride, and hate. just as he did in the minds of the German people. Behold, the Nazi Superman. Let's see how Hitler controlled him through fear. Fear of the concentration camp. Fear of the Gestapo.
Oh, I'm scared. Don't listen to that madman.
Was wollen Sie haben für den Führer?
Now, through sympathy, by crying, I only want peace, but they forced me into war.
Don't cry. He is a big liar.
Don't call my Führer a liar. The whole world is against our peace-loving Führer.
Germany, aber alles.
Now, it's pride. Pride in phony racial theories about Aryan superiority.
It's all childish nonsense.
Shut up! Here's a genius and a great leader. Heil Hitler! Come on, Heil Hitler!
Heil Hitler.
Ja, hassen England. Pfui auf dein
Hate.
England.
Hate for the free, democratic way of life.
This is madness.
Down with the democracies! Sing Heil! Sing Heil! Sing Heil!
Yes, it's madness. Reason has been enslaved, while emotion is the master. A mad emotion, stripped of all reason, leaving nothing but ruin in its wake. So you see, fellows, for us, there is but one answer. You, reason, your job is to think, to plan, to discriminate. And you, emotion, to be a fine, strong emotion. An emotion that loves his country, his freedom, his life. And together, you must be grimly determined to fight against all odds. With reason firmly in the driver's seat, handling the controls along the difficult course to victory, and with emotion by his side, we will go on and do the job we've set out to do. And we'll do it right.
In addition to Reason and Emotion, one of the most intriguing films I found from this time period and from this video essay is 1943's Education for Death, The Making of a Nazi. In this film, the viewer is shown just how strict the Nazis can be. Of course, as many cartoons are comical, humor is brought into these animations. Scholar Donald Crafton has noted how failing to see beyond the childlike nature of animation simply perpetuates a fallacy of innocence. I think I already mentioned how I found this to be the most interesting short animation, cartoon, whatever, from my research. I wish I could talk about it more, but I'm going to move on. If you haven't seen this film already, I highly recommend it, as it's really interesting and is somewhat strange almost. But yeah, I would highly recommend watching if you haven't yet.
Today we own Germany. Tomorrow, the whole world. Hans is now ready for the higher education, as decreed by the Führer.
In addition to Disney, Warner Brothers also created many propagandic films during this time period. One film that stood out to me was 1942's The Ductator, a pun on the word the dictator. Tracy Louise Mullet points out in her book that this film is unquestionably more violent than any other aired during the 1930s, and the reference to the fascist threat is explicit and obvious. However, with this propaganda, as well as many others during this time, which I will discuss later in this essay, came racist caricatures. Mullet also notes how Americans widespread used negative Japanese caricatures, specifically after the bombings of Pearl Harbor. This was to make them appear more comical and less of a threat to the public. In addition to racist caricatures shown in The Dictator, Tokyo Jokio is infamously known for being one of the most racially offensive cartoons ever made. And I would have to agree that this is some of the most insensitive, racist caricatures I've ever seen in animation. I cannot believe that this was not even 100 years ago that these were... It's just terrible. But I thought it would be important to include them because it is part of our history.
Oh, yum yum sandwich. After eating, you were enjoying a crab.
There is even an offensive joke thrown in about the concentration camps in Germany.
Frashes from the Axis. Berlin. Flash, the Fuhrer has just received a postcard from a friend vacationing abroad.
This was really one of the only representations of the camps that I really found during my research, and the fact that it's like joking is kind of disturbing to me. It just, like all cartoons, it plays a lighthearted effect on a very dark and disturbing situation. Alright, enough about all the animation. Let's dive into the comics created during this time. One comic creator that really stood out to me was, as I mentioned previously, Dr. Seuss. Kinda Crazy Dr. Seuss is known for these children's books, and not many people know that he has sort of this dark side to him. Some of these cartoons were published in newspapers to assist with the war effort, but others criticized the United States and their role in the war. Dr. Seuss was more upfront when it came to battling anti-Semitism during this time period than I found in other medias. But in addition to battling anti-Semitism, his criticism for Hitler and how harsh his policies were plain to see in his work. His cartoons, also similarly to the others I have previously mentioned, contain offensive portrayals of Japanese people. These became more common after Pearl Harbor, especially in Dr. Seuss's cartoons. There's so many of these comics that can be found online. If you go to University of California, San Diego's library, they have all of these cartoons that he made during this time period published onto a website where you can click through and read them all. I highly recommend checking them out because there's so much that I can't really talk about in this video, and they're all, you know, with the wackiness of Dr. Seuss, they're very interesting to look at, and they all have different messages behind them. Today, some of these medias have continued to be relevant. When it comes to Disney, 1994's The Lion King contains imagery during the song Be Prepared that is meant to be extremely similar to the Nazi propaganda film Triumph of the Will, directed by Leni Riefenstahl, who interestingly, as I previously mentioned, visited Disney Studios. However, in the 2019 live-action remake of the film, the song was removed entirely and replaced with a poem-like recital in its place. Matt Roth has written about how The Lion King contains fascist themes throughout the film as well. Captain America was created during the era of World War II by two Jews, by the way, which I think is so cool that two Jewish Americans created a superhero to literally defeat Nazis. Captain America's #1 enemy was and continues to be Nazis.
Captain America, our fortunes have crossed yet again.
Kleiser.
Starten Sie die Rakete! Jetzt! Over, and you have lost.
Haven't you heard? Hitler's dead!
And of course, Marvel is still highly relevant today, with movies still being made through Disney, which I might add. Okay, let's sum things up. Of course, in today's media, there continues to be political cartoons and etc., in different platforms, whether it be, let's say, in newspapers, as always, or in adult animation, even children's animation. It's just very easy nowadays to produce these works and get them published somewhere for the public to see. It's still important to look back on all of these different medias that are from this time period and how they affected society and how their message was spread politically. So, thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you are a bit more informed on the cartoons that were created during this time period. I know after doing this project I certainly am. I had no idea that Disney created a whole entire short about how a Nazi is made, and I think that I actually had a lot of fun doing this project and taking this course. Expanding knowledge is always so important, and I hope that this video is a tool to spread more knowledge. So, thank you!